Well, good afternoon, everybody. I think we'll go ahead and get started. I'm sure people will start logging in, um, as they join. So in the interest of respecting people's time, um, we will go ahead and get started. So we'd like to welcome back Nelson Vergel, and this is kind of a reprise of a talk he did for our Positive Life program in March, I believe it was, and we had some technical difficulties where there was no Wi-Fi at the venue that we rely on to Zoomcast. So Nelson has very graciously agreed to do the talk again on this special kind of one-off Zoom Positive Life program. So welcome back, Nelson. Great to have you.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me again and again and again and again. I've been going to Palm Springs for what, 20 years maybe?
Yeah, that's right. It is.
I think the only lecture I give now. Yeah, because now since I left disability. So I love it every time you invite me because it's March in Palm Springs and couldn't get better. So yeah, today I'm gonna share the screen right now so that we can start. Let's see where to put the PowerPoint. Here we go. The beginning. Can everybody see my screen? Yeah, the slides?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Well, today I wanted to speak about something that well, it concerns all of us. I've been positive for, I think I got infected in 1983. So I had a really bad bout there of all kinds of stuff. I don't know exactly how I got it. But anyways, so long-term survivor, close to what, 40 years? I stopped counting like some of us. 65 years of age now. A lot of issues, even though I'm pretty happy to be alive. And my main concern, really, as probably all of us living with HIV long term, is being independent and not needing the help of others, and maximizing resilience. Really, that's what it is. Not only strength, emotional resilience, physical resilience, et cetera, et cetera. And it's very depressing to read some of the articles. I stopped reading, actually, studies. We have a group called Post Health, where our friend Jules Levin, one of the main activists in the country, posts updates on every conference, and a lot of conferences keep saying the same thing, that we becoming more frail than the general population, that we have more comorbidities, et cetera, et cetera. I really, to be honest with you, I stopped reading them because why talk so much about the fact that we have higher incidence of everything when nobody's really talking about treatments, interventions, how to. So hopefully today, I only have 1 hour, probably if Jeff lets me go beyond that, have a lot to cover, but I'm going to concentrate more on what can we do about, frailty, resilience, etc. So, and by the way, questions, I will take questions at the end of the lecture. So here is the agenda. Agent with HIV, there is actually one or two surveys that have been done for in people that have been living with HIV for over 15 years. Most of us have been living with HIV for over 20 or 30, in Palm Springs especially. And what they have found about, how we're living, etc. I'm going to review that data very briefly. Frailty, excuse me, I have the baddest allergies. Houston is covered with pollen right now. Anyways, frail teenaging, how to deal with it. Everybody gets eventually, if we don't take care of ourselves, HIV positive or negatives, we move into the frailty zone, the danger zone. And what can we do to slow down? Actually, hopefully just drop dead one day, not having to go through this. That's really the goal of healthy aging. If we're gonna die one day, just drop dead and not have to suffer or have other people suffer around us, taking care of us. The latest treatment for lipodystrophy is little interesting data. Hormones and aging. Everybody wants to talk about hormones. Every time I try to change the subject, it comes back to hormones because I've been obviously working on that field for a while. So I'll talk about thyroid and testosterone and what happens when we age and the hormone changes that happen and how to deal with them. The next topic is very close to my heart, very dear to my heart, is the search for immune boosting therapies. Some of us have still, after living with HIV for this long, have relatively low T cells, under 250, 300 or so, in the activism that we actually need to engage to convince pharmaceutical companies that it is now time to spend more money on actually treatments that may make a difference, not only on T cells, but also on quality of life. There's an upcoming tsunami, that's what I say, in psychiatry, which is the first approvals of the psychedelic therapies for depression, PTSD, etc. Very excited about that. I'm married to a psychiatrist who in a month and a half is going to retire. So I keep telling him he's not going to be in practice well when this tsunami comes, and it's going to change everything, at least on my biased point of view when it comes to depression and PTSD. It's resources and questions and answers. So let's move on so that I can cover the entire agenda. I always have too much, but I do one of these once a year, so don't blame me, please. So anyways,
We've got plenty of time, Nelson, just so you know. We don't have a hard stop at the top of the hour, so.
I record this for the 276 people that registered. Anyways, so this is probably the most interesting survey I've seen, and there are not that many out there. Really aren't. People not spending the money on surveys, and we need more surveys. We need to see what's going on out there with people like us. So I'm going to go through the Health HIVs. Healthhiv.org is a website. It's an NGO that looks at different things about aging and HIV. And they did a survey for those an online survey for people with HIV or that have lived with HIV for over 15 years. So we'll see some of the findings. So not surprisingly, multimorbidity and polypharmacy, it's an universal issue. A lot of us are taking not only our HIV meds, but also blood pressure, lipid lowering agents, painkillers, because pain is really, they have found pain to be a big issue in HIV. Heart meds, heart condition meds, depression, etc., psych meds, you name it. I'm one of them. I'm taking a lot of pills twice a day. I don't have a problem with them. I actually think that every time we grab those pills, we should not complain. We should say how privileged we are to have access to so many treatments and so many doctors. Some of us don't have that access, and I think some of us lose that perspective sometimes, that the fact that we're alive, and even if we have to take all these pills, there's just privilege in access. Mental illness is on the rise. 64% of respondents reported some mental health concerns compared to 40% of the year before. So this, I have to say, let me just make a clarification on this one. This was done through COVID, 2022, 23. So obviously, some of us also were a little more stressed out and more depressed and more isolated. But I do think that more than 50%, we can say, of people living with HIV are concerned with their own mental health, depression, or even anxiety. Some of us, many of us, are dealing with unresolved trauma from all the loss that we have basically experienced, burying friends and lovers like me. I've buried so many people, I stopped counting and try not to think too much about it. So some of us are dealing with it by not dealing with it. Retirement savings are minimal. Half of the respondents had no financial retirement plan, and 4 in 5 had not saved enough money for long-term care or supportive home care. And a lot of, over 50% of participants also live by themselves, which makes it a little more concerning of not having enough savings to, for retirement, to have people take care of you. That for me, if in all out of all these listed items, for me personally, I think it's the most concerning, because we are about more than 50% of us are over 50. I'm seeing new data that more than 50% of us in the big cities are over 60. So another tsunami is coming of HIV positives over 60, over 70, having more issues, obviously, than the general population, and not having enough savings, money, because many of us went on disability in the peak of our years, of our productive years. And some of us are still on disability. So I really hope, and I'm sure some nonprofits are working on this issue, but in my point of view, this is a non-medical issue that really requires for nonprofits, NGOs, grant funding foundations to put a lot more money in on how to make sure everybody with HIV that is, getting older has some plan for healthcare in the long term. Because we also have survived HIV, but what is coming is surviving long age and not being dependent on anybody, or trying not to. There's a strong sentiment among responders that we're usually forgotten and left out of the conversation in HIV care. So very concerning, as you can tell, findings. They asked all the participants to define or describe how aging with HIV has been for them in one word. So obviously you see the biggest word here: challenging, difficult, complicated, manageable. And I believe I'm included. I'm very privileged. I was an engineer. I went on disability because of my job, et cetera, et cetera. But many people are not privileged, and even the privileged will still can relate to all this. People with access to treatments, access to whatever, still can say, wow, this is challenging. I feel that way. I'm 65, but I'm ahead of the curve when it comes to having medical issues and surgeries, et cetera, really more than anybody I know. And you keep a good attitude, but it's challenging, complicated, stressful, manageable. We should all be happy to be alive. We should never complain. We should be happy to be alive. So that's the only problem, that even talking to ourselves, to each other, to groups, to HIV positives, to negatives, many of us are not even talking about these issues, because we are told that I've been told, and I accept it, that we should just be happy to be alive. But the fact is, there are many things that we're dealing with beyond just surviving for 30, 40 years, which in itself is success and is triumph. But yet now the time comes where we really have to face a lot of the medical issues and get familiarized with the medical system, healthcare system in this country, which obviously many of us know that we have to jump many barriers to access, even in the richest country of the world. And these are the comorbidities that people reported. Dysplasia, almost 19%, cancer, 24%. I've had cancer, lymphoma in the stomach, diabetes 17, frailty, and I'm going to talk a little bit about frailty. 30% of hepatitis B, C, which thank God can be treated. Heart issues, a third of them. Hearing problems, hypertension, almost 60%. I'm one of them that has to take 2 treatments for hypertension. Hypertriglyceridemia, much of that is caused by HIV meds. 40%. Joint or back pain, that's number 1, 64%. I had 2 back surgeries and 1 hip replacement, so I definitely fit there. When I saw these numbers, like, wow, pain, joint and back pain is number 1, in the percentages. Liver disease, especially if you had obviously the hep C and all the other stuff. Lung disease, COPD, impaired cognition, 22%. Neurological conditions, mostly neuropathy, et cetera. And neuropathy, 45%. And a lot of this stuff too is the leftovers, the residual effects of the nasty drugs that saved our lives, because I shouldn't say nasty just by itself. I should really explain that a lot of those nasty drugs like D4D, DDC, saved our lives, but we really are still paying the price for taking them. Osteoporosis, 30%. We know that tenofovir, Variad was the main culprit in this. Some of us still take it. There's a new version that supposedly doesn't cause bone loss as much. Oral issues, I was surprised to see almost 40% pre-diabetes and sex drive, low sex drive, low libido, almost 50% of us. So not too surprising. I was really surprised about the pain, the joint and back pain, which obviously I sympathize with, since that's been my main driving in my issues in HIV. So I just did for a hell of it, because I'm training, I'm enjoying a lot. I've been invited to do a monthly training to medical school doctors, people finishing medical school at Brown University once a month. I've done 4. So for the hell of it, I went through my records, the ones that I have access to online, and had ChatGPT go through my 15 years records just to see how many CPT codes, diagnosis, doctors that I've seen have used to charge my insurance policy, and 158 of them CPT codes. I was surprised, but that's in 50 years. I have found to have 158 different diagnoses, okay? And these are the different specialties, 32 specialties, although I probably added 2 or 3 in the past month. This has been kind of a weird month. But anyways, 32 medical specialties. So some of us are luckier than others. Some people have it even worse than this. But what this shows you, and I show them this slide so that they know that I'm not just some crazy guy talking about my experiences with the medical system, but I'm also somebody that has seen a lot of specialties and has had a lot of diagnoses. So it gives me a little bit of that respect that they need to get before I continue my lecture with them. But it's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, because that's really where the change happens, when you're telling young kids, they really are, and very diverse, from Brown University, what we deal with and how we have cultural competence, not only in the LGBTQ community, but also the long-term and the short-term HIV positives. So let me see if I can, because I'm getting confused with so many screens here. Another findings from that survey is that 32%, and this is even looking at it, it really kind of is upsetting. 32% of participants don't have anyone to take care of them when they get sick or injured. So a third of people don't have anybody to be with them when something bad happens. But at the same time, which was very surprising, this was a large cohort from all over the country, 66% participate in community groups. For me, that's surprising, because I don't participate in community groups, and a lot of people in Houston don't. So I was very surprised at this. Obviously, these are people that are already hooked up in a network, online network, from different hospitals, different groups, so they could get the email about the survey. So I don't think most, maybe I'm biased, most HIV positive people that are older, surviving with HIVs, 2/3 of them are going to community groups. Hey, I hope so. I hope I'm an anomaly, but hey, who knows? Maybe I don't know anything. 7% said they had no one else to call in cases of emergency. So there is some isolation. Obviously, as I said, this data was collected through COVID, so it makes sense that there is isolation. There's some concern issues about support and long-term care. And this is what my friend Jeff Taylor said on an email in our group, Post Health. And I was I actually said, I'm going to copy that and put it on the slide. I know it's a long paragraph. It's the erosion resilience. And maybe Jeff, since you're here, I don't have to speak put words in your mouth. Can you just tell us in like briefly what you meant with this paragraph?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, we're preaching to the choir here, right? We've all lived through this, and I think we all see it. If not in ourselves, certainly the people around us. But, by definition, as you were saying earlier, we are very resilient. We wouldn't be here if we weren't, right? We went through hell and back in the early days, those of us who were, diagnosed in the 80s and 90s before the cocktail came out. And so, yeah, we have these coping skills. And I think, one thing that made me aware of this is we did, some of the surveys here in Palm Springs, during COVID and immediately afterwards. And people had these coping mechanisms that they put into place. And you talk to their providers and it's like, my HIV patients are doing the best during all this. They're not freaking out. They know where to get good information. They know what to do when they're doing it. And they're going to be fine. But I think what we see is as people get older and the support systems that they've relied upon to keep them going through all this, right? That's eroding as well. It's not just the people themselves, it's their support systems around them that are crumbling at the same time. We all know that many of us moved to Palm Springs because we couldn't afford to live elsewhere. So a lot of that, people get uprooted from the communities that sustained them in those early days. And those communities are being decimated first by HIV, now by the housing cost crisis that forces them out of those neighborhoods. And people are also getting older and dying as well, not in the numbers that they were. So I think all this puts, and you were talking about the healthcare system, how hard it is to navigate, and finance. We can't underestimate the impact of finances. Many of us have been kind of flat funded with our disability for many years. And those of us who were lucky enough to have long-term disability policies through our work, that for most people stayed completely flat and has been eroding over time with cost of living. And once we hit 65, that goes away. And so there's going to be a huge bolus of people who are hitting 65 who are going to lose that income and be left with nothing but Social Security that they have not paid into for 30 or maybe even 40 years. So they're not going to have enough. And that's a huge stressor for a lot of people. Where am I going to live? As it is now, people are getting priced out of where they are, even here in Palm Springs. COVID kind of upended our housing market, as it did a lot of places. So yeah, there's all these factors coming to bear, and no matter how resilient people have been and what skills they have, it's just not enough when all that starts hitting the fan at the same time. Thanks.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. I mean, the way you verbalize this stuff, you should write a book about the erosion of resilience. I think it's a great topic. I don't think most people are talking about it. The fact that, yeah, we're long-term survivors. Obviously, we develop some kind of skills, but they're worth it after you're aging and your support system changes, your finances change it, and a lot of us are spending a lot more money on medical care. So thanks a lot for summarizing it beautifully. But this is a topic that I don't think is discussed anywhere else. I haven't seen. So Jeff is our number one activist when it comes to many topics, cure research, and one of the aging research activists too. But this thing really is an unspoken topic that we have to deal with. And I don't want to be a downer. I'm usually give a lot of options. So now we're going to talk about options because it's a little bit of a downer, but this is what we have to talk about, right? I tend not to talk about things that affect me emotionally too much, and that's definitely a coping mechanism that some of us just it doesn't work in the long term. The frailty situation, yeah, we have data, more data that shows that yeah, we have become more frail than the general HIV negative population of the same age. And I'll talk about frailty and what that means. Frailty, a brief overview. Weight loss through aging, weakness, mostly extremities, legs. We cannot squat as much. We cannot bend over with many issues, but mostly weakness in the lower extremities. Exhaustion, like getting out of breath, going up the stairs, little things that we used to do. Slowness, obviously, and the decreased physical activity. More and more data, and obviously this is data from 2005. where we're seeing a lot more data, and that not only for HIV positives, but for all of us in America and in most countries, industrialized countries, we're being killed by the fact that we're spending a lot of time sitting. Sitting is like my chiropractor says. I used to see people, mostly people that work in construction. They were my patients. Now I see mostly people that are working, sitting in front of a computer, since sitting has long-term issues when it comes to back pain, hip pain, and it's also lowering our physical activity. And some studies are showing that you should really go from 6,000 to 10,000 steps a day. I count my steps every day on an app. Just to keep up with functional capacity. And as we sit more, we'll have more problems physically. So basically, no more aging. You see in this curve here, and there is accelerated aging, which is a very common term used in HIV conferences. We have accelerated aging in HIV. Some data shows that we're 15 years ahead, which I hate. I have to say I have a problem dealing with that data. I know it's probably just me not being able to deal with the fact that there is this disease that we've had so long that is inflammatory in its nature, that puts us at higher odds of anything. I've never really accepted that. So that's why I'm obviously obsessed looking at different treatments, different options. I've been told that I talk too much about things that haven't been proven. But hey, we're alive because many of us did things that were not proven back in the days. So the many phases of frailty. We have obviously physical. That's what most of us think about, right? The weakness, the loss of not only muscle mass but strength. The sensory, which sometimes we're losing our eyesight while we don't hear as well, we don't taste as well. Cognitive, we're all terrified about this cognitive dysfunction in HIV, or some of us that have parents that have Alzheimer's. Obviously, we're pretty concerned because we may or may not have the genetic predisposition. My mom has Alzheimer's. I did get tested for 2 mutations. They came out negative, but does that mean anything? It really doesn't, really. The emotional frailty and the lack of support system, community involvement, social is the same kind of relatedness. So frailty is a combination of many factors, not only a physical part of it, but there's all kinds. This I know this can give you a headache, but I'll make sure I don't go through it really, in detail. I love the term endocrinology of sarcopenia and frailty, meaning how hormones change through aging, and also obviously as we get more frail, because this is really what I love searching. And a lot of us can have access to many things that can slow down or change this picture. Okay. So we're talking about from the left-hand side, sarcopenic obesity. What is that? It's basically you may be heavy or fat, high BMI, but your lean body mass, which is what keeps us alive, is low. Some people may be obese and still have low lean mass due to all these factors here, and inflammation, low growth hormone, low IGF-1, especially if you're not working out, not exercising. That could also contribute to frailty. Thyroid, I'm going to speak a little bit about thyroid today, because I think a lot of Americans are have hypothyroidism due to autoimmune problems like Hashimoto's. And in HIV hasn't been explored. I mean, my husband, for instance, was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I was the one that found out he had Hashimoto's, because the ranges that they're using for thyroid testing are kind of off. And many of us can be tired, gaining weight, getting cold easily, losing hair, our skin gets a little drier. And it really is all about thyroid, and taking a thyroid med every morning can resolve it. Gonadal axis, low testosterone, low estrogen. Estrogen is very important also, not only for women, but for men. malnutrition, obviously, low protein intake, issues with the adrenal glands. And some of us are feeling too tired or having too many pain issues not to go to the gym or even walk. As I said, having anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 steps a day is sometimes good enough to keep a good bone density, a good prevention against frailty. Some of us may have low vitamin D. I think that's been corrected. A lot of us, and everybody talked to, is taking vitamin D. Sometimes not enough. So you can do a vitamin D blood test and just to make sure you're in the right range. Obviously, increased stage and metabolic dysfunction like insulin resistance, etc. So these are only the hormonal side of the story of frailty and sarcopenia, which is the loss of lean mass through aging. We used to call, obviously many of us are traumatized by our years of wasting syndrome, which was a loss of weight, involuntary loss of weight, and mostly lean mass back in the days. Now this is the second phase. When you're getting older, you're also losing weight and losing lean body mass. So at least for me, just feels like a little too familiar because some of us were, at least I was, so traumatized about wasting, so much so I wrote a book about it. And this is like the new phase of wasting in old age. So they're really simple tests to see how well you're doing when it comes to frailty. And sitting in a chair and then doing chair races, 5 chair races under 15 seconds, you're 0 points. If you 5 chair races over 15, 1 point, etc., unable to even finish, 5 chair races in 15 seconds, you get 2. So obviously, higher the points, and more frailty score they may have. I mean, this is hard to prove whether or not you have cognitive impairment. I think I have cognitive impairment. I have a hard time remembering names. So maybe you give yourself 1 point if you're forgetting a lot of stuff. Hemoglobin, the stuff that is in red blood cells that helps distribute oxygen throughout the body. Some of us may have low hemoglobin. Oops, sorry. I didn't mean to click. Low hemoglobin. These are women and men. And that gives you 1 point, meaning you're a little anemic or close to anemia or anemic. You get 1 point. And albumin, which is really a protein in the blood, and that usually, by the way, is hemoglobin and albumin are part of a CBC panel, which every one of us gets a CBC test along with all the other tests that we get when we see the doctor. The only issue is that most of us, well, not the aging ones like me, but a lot of HIV positive patients are only seeing the doctor once a year now. It used to be I remember days when it used to be every month, then every 3 months, and every 6 months. Some people are seeing the doctor for a year. So having at least your hemoglobin and your albumin measured through a cheap test, cell blood test. So it calls
Nelson, quick question about the hemoglobin. Because I know a lot of older men with HIV had the opposite problem where it's too high, often because they're on testosterone replacement. So you might want to speak to that and how to manage that for folks.
We'll speak about it on testosterone. Yeah, that's a problem with testosterone replacement. It's the number one side effect is that our red blood cells increase dramatically, and obviously hemoglobin does too. And that's another risk factor for cardiovascular disease when we have so many red blood cells that actually our blood gets viscous, gets a lot more dense. And obviously we have a pump that actually pumps that fluid, and the thicker the fluid, the more difficult it is for the heart to do its job. So many of us aging with HIV are on testosterone, because low testosterone was really over 60% of us back in the days were diagnosed with low testosterone. And obviously now the testosterone world has exploded. But that's a good question. But a lot of hemoglobin can also have the negative consequences to cardiovascular disease. Low hemoglobin will make you tired, will make you weak. So that's why I think it's included in the frailty scoring toolset, because really that will having low hemoglobin is even worse than having higher hemoglobin, higher than normal, because at least the higher than normal, it's a long-term effect, eventually catches up with you when it comes to your heart. But being anemic or pseudo-anemic really makes a big difference on whether or not you can get out of bed or even exercise or go for a walk. So we also found that we have more sleep issues, and obviously that also causes more frailty compared to men without HIV. And this is male data, by the way. I don't try to be male-centric, but a lot of this data was mostly male and mostly gay men too. So sleep is something that I'm personally very concerned. I have sleep issues. I have to take most of the days a pill and melatonin and sound machine and eye shades. Some of us, I have always been that way, but it's getting worse with age, where we wake up more frequently. We go pee more than once or twice a night. That has been associated with frailty, fatigue during the day, low cognitive function, etc. So if there are things that we have to protect, is protect our sleep. I actually got diagnosed last week with sleep apnea. Finally, after it's a home test. I didn't want to do the fancy test that I've done 20 years ago. So I'm waiting for my CPAP machine. But I think sleep, getting off the damn chair, making sure your hormones are not low, your thyroid and your testosterone, eating enough protein, having enough support, enough socialization, you know where I'm getting at. I'm still developing a case. So obviously, poor sleep has cardiovascular consequences. Your blood pressure may go up. Your heart is working harder. What happens through sleep is that our testosterone peaks, even if well, some of us are on testosterone already. Growth hormone peaks. Cortisol peaks in the morning, which is an anti-inflammatory. Thyroid peaks around 4 or 5 in the morning. If we disrupt sleep, we're also disrupting hormones. So, and in my point of view, either because of denial or the fact that we have no access, many of us are walking around with sleep apnea and not being treated or tested. And some of us, that changed like recently. You have to go and see a pulmonologist. I remember this primary care could prescribe you a CPAP. But anyways, so there are different CPAPs, nasal pillows, which is what I'm going to try. I tried these big things before. I was claustrophobic. There's a nasal pill now that comes in, and a hose that comes out of your top of your head, so you can actually flip, turn around when you sleep. So, anyways, so things that we can do, as I said, exercise. We have to find a way either to walk 6,000 to 10,000 steps. There are many free apps that you can download on your app to measure your steps. Concentrate more on protein. I saw some data, and I believe that data is that as we get older, we kind of crave more carbs and more sweets. I see my mom, I see my father-in-law before he died. That's all they wanted. They didn't want any protein. It's almost like the body's avoiding the main thing that it needs. Our taste buds also change. Sleep apnea, like I said, if you're fatigued in the morning, if you're not feeling refreshed, if your blood pressure has gone up, even if you have low libido, erectile dysfunction, you name it, everything's tied to sleep apnea. I like, out of all the supplements, is creatine. It's the most studied supplement in health, bodybuilding, and whatever you want to call it. Creatine is the main source is mostly meats, and you have to eat something like 5 pounds of beef to get enough creatine. Creatine is good because it increases strength and actually increases lean mass. It has a problem. The problems that it has is that it can increase water retention. And some doctors may freak out because your creatinine, which is the kidney function, may go up because you're taking creatinine. And some of them, when they see your blood work, they think you have kidney dysfunction or that your HIV meds are screwing with your kidneys. So you have to be very clear to your doctor that if you're taking creatine, which I only take a teaspoon with my coffee in the morning, and really makes a difference. It keeps my body up. When I go to the gym, I feel like I can do the job without suffering too much. And we have more data can actually on cognitive function, on energy, on mood. Creatine really is that the only supplement that has been proven to do all that by medical schools everywhere, by physiologists, by everything. So I'm not selling creatine. It's the cheapest thing too. You can buy a bag of 2 pounds of creatine for less than $20 on Amazon. So a teaspoon a day. If you want to do more, like twice a day, I recommend it. But talk to your doctor because he or she will freak out about your kidney function. Testosterone, obviously, many of us had low testosterone now on testosterone. Nandrolone and oxandrolone, which back in the days, that was my obsession. I wrote a book called Built to Survive about wasting syndrome. And obviously, yes, we're not wasting like we did, obviously, back in the days. But some doctors are still prescribing it, prescribe both of them. They're both compounded. You cannot get them through insurance. You have to pay cash through compounding pharmacies. And many doctors are still afraid of them, even though in the 90s, almost every HIV doctor that had a big practice were prescribing them because they really were freaking out about people dying of wasting syndrome. Glutathione enhancement. Glutathione is a main antioxidant of the body, and there are many supplements that increase and enhance glutathione. Selenium, even a multivitamin. Some people take sublingual glutathione, etc. It really is our own body's antioxidant that we produce, but some of us may have low precursors to glutathione. Everybody takes vitamin D. We all should. We're all trying to avoid the sun. At least 5,000 IUs a day can get you to a normal range. Some people are taking just 1,000, and they still have low vitamin D in the blood work. Thyroid, I'm going to speak about thyroid balance. I think is the least spoken about hormone treatment. Testosterone obviously is all over the place. I mean, you see it on Facebook, you see it on Instagram. It's like telemedicine companies. COVID was a horrible thing that happened to the world. But one of the few good things that came out of COVID was the fact that the telemedicine regulations in this country were loosened, and they haven't been changed. We're still waiting for the DEA to say the final word, but hundreds of telemedicine companies have popped up, not only to sell testosterone, but also all kinds of products, you name it. GLP-1s, semaglutide, all the fat weight loss products, you name them. So telemedicine has exploded in the United States. Some people think it's a bad thing. I think it's a great thing. I think increasing access without you having to leave your house. Most of them are cash-based. So that's where the trouble is. It is for the privileged to access a lot of these treatments. Exercise is key. You could do everything you want, but if you don't do at least weight training or resistance training, you're not going to get the bone density improvements, lean body mass improvements. You're not. Maybe if you did, even squatting at home, there's some home-based resistance exercise programs that you can probably do. But warming up before a session, start with compounded exercises at the gym. What does that mean? Exercises that cover an entire range of, or entire group of muscles, like very light squats. Most of us may have back problems. That covers the entire lower body. Even don't concentrate on anything like a bicep curl is only concentrated on the biceps. That's good. You can do that. But at the beginning of the session, try to concentrate on compounded exercises. What we can do is when Jeff Taylor sends the video to everybody, including the ones that did not obviously show up for the live session, we can send some links on different programs that are available online that I have on my site called excelmail.com on different types of exercises, what's compounded, what's an isolation exercise. But definitely resistance training for men and women is key to fighting frailty. And the problem, the chicken or the egg problem, some of us are so tired sometimes that just we refuse to go to the gym. I tell people just going to the gym is a success. You showing up there, even if you just go around just chatting with your friends, is a success. You got out of the house and you actually went there and doing, even if you have to do light exercises. 1 hour sessions, 3 to 4 times a week. That's all you really need if you're doing it well. One light set to warm up per body part, and then 2 heavier sets. When I say heavier, anything, any weight set that can get you, any weight setting that can get you to at least 10 reps. That's heavier set, whatever that means for you. Is if no access to a gym, crunches and push-ups and squats at home. As I said, I have, we can send a link to the different programs. And I have a website called excelmail.com. There are 45,000 men, mostly straight, that are chatting all day from about testosterone, exercise, a lot on sex drive and erectile dysfunction. So you're going to switch right now the craze, semaglutide craze, or the GLP-1s. You see it on the media. The media has done a really good job and telling everybody what celebrity is on this stuff or not. Everybody's losing weight like crazy. It's an injection once a week under the skin. It's water-based. There is not enough in the country, so it's most of it is compounded. Insurance companies refuse to pay for it unless you have diabetes. Medicare is considering approving it for obesity. I don't know. It's going to be a lot of money. Anyway, so it's definitely showing good results. And there was a doctor that did a pilot study for HIV lipodystrophy, mostly the accumulation of visceral fat in the belly that we have. A lot of us, I do have it. It's inside the organ cavity. I mean, some of us have lost a lot of fat under the skin because of lipoatrophy, because of D4T and serrate and all that stuff back in the days. But we gain weight, fat in the inside the belly, in the visceral area, and that's one of the hardest fats to get rid of, even if you do everything right. So nobody has had an answer to lipohypertrophy, really, which is the part of lipodystrophy that is about the visceral fat. Nobody has had a solution. So this is the first time, and this is a busy slide. I'll try to make it simple. Don't worry too much about it. Yes, people lost weight. People lost fat, both under the skin and in the visceral area. So the problem is that some people lost fat under the skin where they already had a lot of lipoatrophy, a lot of fat loss. So obviously, for some people, that's not a good thing. A lot of us got facial fillers because we had the money or the access to it. That was not something that everybody had access to back in the days, or glutes, lipoatrophy of the buttocks. That was another problem. But anyways, so yes, you lose fat, you lose weight, like everybody. You lose muscle, and some people may freak out about their fat loss under the skin. Okay, I would like to see another study that does this, uses semaglutide or any of the other GLP-1s. There are 3 of them after this one got approved, and combining it with exercise, resistance exercise, looking at everybody's hormones, testosterone, thyroid, just make sure that these things are not affecting your hormones. And if they are, to replace them and see if we don't lose as much muscle, because that really comes along with the use of these drugs. So I really think this is promising. Obviously, nobody's going to pay, no insurance company is going to pay for semaglutide for lipodystrophy. So I used to be a lipodystrophy activist. I'm too busy now trying to make a living, and there's none of us left. So all I say is that this is a very promising thing, and maybe we should do research in combination with other things like exercise and hormone replacement to see if we don't lose as much lean mass, because we don't want to lose any more lean body mass, not through aging. So 1 milligram subcutaneously was effective. Another side effect that these products have is that some people may have a slowdown in their GI, in their gastrointestinal, in their the way they digest food. They may get really constipated. That really is what I hear mostly from people that are using it. So you have to be very aware of the fact that you may have to increase your fiber. Some people have to take laxatives, because. But in general, most people that use it have had really good, and that's why it's become a craze. This is the biggest boom in the pharmaceutical industry in the past 30 years. It really is. Hormones and aging. Oh my God, I've already spent a lot of time, so I know I'm gonna try to accelerate my speech more than I have. But hey, we're gonna record it, and if you guys go watch the whole thing, great. And yes, hormones change while we're aging, and that's not a surprise to anybody. In women, estrogen goes down, progesterone, testosterone. In men and women, growth hormone, thyroid may get sluggish. Insulin may go down or up, depending on what. This is the red curve here, but mostly up because of insulin resistance. And cortisol, the anti-inflammatory hormone, also may go up. So mostly everything goes down except insulin and cortisol. So, and some people say that's a way of nature to tell us, hey, I want you out of here. You've already served your purpose. And some anti-aging physicians and researchers say, why? Why do we have to accept this fate? And why don't we just treat a lot of these hormone changes by replacing them? We're still debating whether or not it's a good idea for long-term longevity. I'm biased. I believe in the power of hormones to change. It saved my life from wasting syndrome. And obviously that was testosterone, nandrolone, oxandrolone, but I'm looking at thyroid a lot and other alternatives that people are not looking at. Women have it really rough, too. On the menstrual cycle, obviously, they go through cycles like estrogen goes up and progesterone. And then obviously when they reach menopause, everything flattens out. Women basically become hormonally in their profile like men. Everything goes out, estrogen, progesterone. So they start losing bone density, cognitive issues, hot flashes, everything else happens. So a lot of treatments, a lot of research, a lot of controversy is really now going on with HRT, hormone replacement therapy for women, especially post-menopause. These are different symptoms of low estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone through aging in females. Thyroid is the most underdiagnosed issue, in my point of view. Most doctors just check one biomarker called TSH, and they go by the normal range of 1.5 to or 1 to 4.5. And what we see in a lot of studies that obviously over 2.5, there's already something going on. The higher the TSH, the slower your thyroid function. So you become hypothyroided. And what does that mean? You have low energy, kidney dysfunction, mental health issues, peripheral neuropathy can happen, infertility, birth defects, you name it. And a lot of people are tired, gaining weight, and their doctor told them your TSH is fine, and it may be 3.5 or 4. It happened with my husband. He had like 3.5, and I said, wait a minute, that's within normal range, but wait a minute, let's check. Let's go deeper into the testing, because thyroid is got TSH, free T3, free T4, thyroid antibodies are 2 of them. So really, there are 5 tests that if you're tired, you have a propensity to getting cold easily. You're having like hair loss or brittle hair. difficult sleeping, heat intolerance, muscle weakness, you know, you should at least have those 5 tests, not the TSH, which is what most doctors do because it's cheap, but their range is really not 100% well set by data. So there's controversy, but I have personal experience on people that have had normal TSH that when you do their extra tests, come back to be like they had antibodies, meaning their immune system was destroying the thyroid gland. And there's treatment for that, obviously, thyroid medications. I'm going to switch to testosterone, which is topic I'm getting tired of speaking, but I've been speaking for 30 years. But now
Nelson, just a quick time check. It's top of the hour and you're about halfway through, and we have until half past the hour.
I'm gonna accelerate since this is I don't know, maybe not, maybe you're gonna have to cut me off. Lots of products are getting approved. The latest are the orals, and oral testosterone the one we used to have in the past, methyl testosterone, was liver toxic. These new formulations with testosterone and decanoate can be taken twice a day and they're not liver toxic. Some people don't like to inject. There's a nasal spray, et cetera, et cetera. So this is, as you know, most of you know, it's happening. Many more pharmaceutical companies are coming in, but most people are still injecting testosterone. It's the cheapest and the most commonly used besides androgel, which is a gel that you put on your skin. There's a long-acting injection called Avid that you can inject every 3 months, and a nasal spray, like I said before, 3 times a day. That's not very popular for obvious reasons. The orals, and there is a subcutaneous injectable called Cystead being approved. Kazakhstrex is an oral twice a day for those that don't want to inject, or for those people that are afraid to transfer testosterone from their skin to their female partners or their children. That's another option. Compounding pharmacies make a lot of these products like pellets, the different injectables, creams, gels, HCG, which is used for fertility and for sex drive. Yeah, from now on, all the slides are basically pictures, so I'll be able to just move on. We used to inject deep in the glutes. Now, subcutaneous small injections are the way to go. Now we have good data that it's as good or even better because it causes less pain, less waste, less bleeding, et cetera, to do subcutaneous, or what we call shallow IM. That's how I I inject twice a week, 50 milligrams each time. You don't have to do much. I'm gonna go through this like quickly. Some of you may not care about this, but I do care about it a lot. Some of us have, this is the world of HIV positives in the United States. There may be around 1.3, 1.2 million of us. Believe it or not, the latest data I've seen, only 56% of us have HIV undetectable, which is pretty concerning and pretty weird that we have so many treatments and yet 44% of people may still have detectable viral load. 12.5% of people don't know they have HIV. We don't know, but maybe 10 to 20% of us may have HIV multi-drug resistance, and one of them. And 17% of us or so, or maybe 20, we don't know, we've seen very little data, have T cells under 350, even after 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, many years of HIV treatment with undetectable viral load. So this world, HIV MDR, multi-drug resistance, thank God we have finally enough treatments to treat this population. So obviously I'm part of these two little small populations, and but the INR, the people with immunological non-response, with the T cells under actually 350, nobody has dealt with that. Nobody has come up with something that can increase CD4s in this population and hopefully improve quality of life and survival. We have seen old data from 2012 that the lower the T cells, the more chances for problems in the future with death and illness. So everybody knows that. So the lower your T cells, obviously, the more chances you have of comorbidities and mortality. And like I said, 15-20% of us may have low T cells even after 30-40 years of HIV. There are a few candidates, but nobody's really spending much money. And the only one that I picked is because I'm kind of excited about this one that actually is customized. It was done, this first study was done in 2015 in San Francisco by the small company Sangamo that had a few volunteers. They extracted blood from them, grew their T cells in the lab, and inserted a mutation, a CCR5 double mutation, into our T cells, grew the T cells in the lab more, and reinfused them to these people. These people have been only given one infusion, and they were followed up. I think the last paper was 2 years ago. So they've been followed up for at least 6 to 7 years, and they're all still alive and doing well. The T cells dramatically increased. Obviously, T cells slowly normalize or going down to baseline after a few years. But they just looked at it again 2 or 3 years ago and still found some of the T cells that were modified by a zinc finger nuclease. It's now called TSM. I'm not going to go into that, but there is a small biotech that is really trying to get this off the ground to infuse your own customized T cells and to study somehow whether or not that makes a difference, not only in your health, but on your quality of life. So I'm definitely looking forward to this because my T cells are still under 300 after all these years. Really fast. It's going to be pictures too. I'm very excited about psychedelic therapy because finally we have a lot of companies involved in research, and we obviously, and revisiting this data again, we have a lot of issues with depression, even trauma in HIV. This was the health HIV survey from the year before, 2020, and yeah, a lot of the same data. And these are research studies on psychedelic therapies. When I say psychedelic therapies, it means taking a psychedelic and having a therapist in the room with you through the process. So I'm not talking about pharmaceuticals that are going to be approved for you to take home, and that's not what this is about. The first one that hopefully will be approved, and it was a large long-term study, is MDMA. Some may call it ecstasy, the party drug, but along with therapy, meaning 2 or 3 sessions with a counselor while you take the pill and try to get into your head about issues about that. Mostly it's going to be approved for the first time. It's going to be the indication they're looking for is PTSD, trauma. A lot of the data came from VA, from veterans. And the data is basically collected over 40 years. It's a long study, but we're expecting some pushback from the FDA, but all the data is being approved, already presented, and they're waiting to hear from the FDA. Psilocybin is the active ingredient in mushrooms, in psychedelic magic mushrooms. And I think Jeff Taylor was the one that brought this up to me, that there was a study done in 2017 in California, Oregon, that in HIV positive people, psilocybin assisted group therapy for demoralized older long-term AIDS survivor men, open label feasibility study. Demoralization is a form of existential suffering characterized by poor coping and a sense of helplessness, hopelessness, and a loss of meaning and purpose in life. To me, that sounds like deep depression, but obviously they were looking for people with HIV living with, obviously, demoralization. And they gave them pre and post counseling, a few sessions. I don't want to go into the details, but they did see an improvement, a dramatic improvement in demoralization scale, which is a long survey about their symptoms. So basically, these people felt better. But that was 2017, and nothing else has happened since then. There are more movements through legalized and decriminalized psychedelics. Oregon and Colorado are the top, the ahead of the game. In California and some others are coming through somehow to decriminalize at least personal possession. Oregon is the first one to have actually counseling sessions with psilocybin or in clinics, and they just started the program this year. They've run into some problems. Colorado is next. So even though these drugs are not approved, these drugs are actually Schedule 1, like coke, like crack. They're in the same group of drugs. This state says, screw it, we're going to start therapy with this. And even though the federal government may not agree with it. These are all the pharmaceutical companies working at getting something approved, mostly psilocybin, and some of them are working on other psychedelics to get approved. This is busy as hell, but just to tell you, all the companies working on magic mushrooms, psilocybin in pill forms, others, ibogaine, which is probably the most effective psychedelic for drug addiction, people trying to get off drug addiction. Ketamine, which is already approved for, obviously, it's off-label use. I've used ketamine, I've used psilocybin. It really, I wish I had discovered this earlier. It would have made me a less uptight person, and I would have dealt with a lot of my issues while I was younger. But anyways, not gonna get into that because I don't have much time. Mescaline, I'm sorry, no mescal. LSD, believe it or not, it's being studied, and obviously MDMA, ecstasy. So these are bunches, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3s, and these are all the pharmaceuticals. That's why I know something is going to happen once you have pharma behind it. Obviously, the prices are not going to be great. So mostly, most of the money is going to go for paying counselors and therapists. Ketamine infusions are popping up. The clinics are popping up everywhere. You can Google ketamine, Palm Springs, ketamine, Los Angeles, and you'll see it's approved for anesthesia, but it can basically, for an hour, you get dripped ketamine, and it's the first time ever that I felt you're awake and you feel completely at peace, and you don't have, your ego is completely detached from your bodies. Basically, you are seeing your life without any chatter. I cannot describe it, but it definitely is. And it's a cash only system, around $350 a session. And it's pretty dramatic for people who have anxiety. They're dealing with just a lot of stress. So that's why it's becoming so popular. Psilocybin mushrooms, we have ayahuasca, which is not going to be proved or even studied in the States because it has a lot of physical consequences, but there are many ayahuasca retreats in the United States, believe it or not. The government hasn't really screwed with them much because many of them are under the jurisdiction of plant medicine churches. They're classified as churches. This is something that holds extreme hope for people with drug addiction, LSD, heroin, mostly heroin. There are many clinics in Mexico and Brazil, and people are flying there, spending their money, desperate to get off these drugs. And now that the Biden administration has opened up for grants in the area of depression and mental health, some states like Kentucky are trying to get grants for the treatment, the ibogaine clinics there to treat veterans with PTSD and with addiction. They have reactions, mostly blood pressure increases, anxiety. You have to have really a counselor a well-trained counselor through the therapy sessions to deal with them. And there are also interactions with antidepressants, If you're taking some of them, you'll probably be told to stop them before a week or two before you start the therapy. Most people don't know that. So resources, I'm done. To find a counselor, MAPS is a multidisciplinary association for psychedelic studies. They have been advocating for 40 to 50 years after the government made it illegal to use psychedelics for studies. They're actually the ones that collected the MDMA data, and they also are training counselors to do what we call integration. Excuse me, integration in people that have done psychedelics. This is a website to find the counselors that have been trained by them. I really believe a lot of us have trauma in HIV, and I'm strong bias. I took basically a year off, and I travel all over to try 5 different psychedelics in the presence of Native American rituals, etc. And it really, that was only 4 years ago, and I really believe this changed my life, on my attitude towards, and my stress and my need for control and my anxiety about death and disease. We have a women's group on Facebook, 17,000 women, for those that want to talk about HRT, mostly hormone replacement in women. excelmale.com, mostly for men. I want to talk about all kinds of things, hormones, sex drive, you name it. This is my plug for my company, Discounted Labs. I went off disability, 9 years ago, and I now sell blood tests at low prices without a doctor's visit on a prescription. We provide the prescription for you. In our Jeff's and I website group online is called Plus Health. And if you send an email to Plus Health, the plus sign subscribe at groups.io, you can join us. There are probably 3,800 of us discussing all kinds of stuff like conferences, etc. It really is for the nerds, by the way, if you really are into that stuff. So I'm going to stop sharing and take, there's a bunch of questions on the chat. Jeff, you want to moderate that, or should I do that? Jeff, you're muted.
Sorry about that. No, the things in the chat are mostly things that I posted. Just kind of adding on. You were talking about, drug-assisted recovery therapy, and there's a lot of talk with Ozempic and similar drugs that, one of the ways they work is they lower the desire for addictive and compulsive behaviors like eating, but also drug use, alcohol use, things like that. So there may be a role for those drugs as well, especially for things like meth, where we don't have anything. Opioids, we've got a number of options, but nothing for meth, and as we know, that's a huge problem in our community.
That's a good point. Yeah, there's reduced cravings for alcohol, for even carbs, sugar, smoking. I've seen some people actually not smoking as much. They don't stop smoking. I really believe Ibogaine holds the most future. I've seen the most miracles there. I met a few people, I read a few books. You have to do it with a knowledgeable physician, not just in a ritual, because because you basically spend 30 hours where you cannot move. You're in your head. But a lot of people have done at least 2 of the sessions, and they have no cravings for heroin. So anyways.
So any other questions for Nelson? Go ahead and use the raise hand, or just raise your hand and then mute and ask, or put it in the
Tap in the
There's a lot of information, so there've got to be some questions. So while you were waiting for that, you talked about some of the new drugs and immunologic non-responders. I think, with what's out there, people should be able to construct a regimen unless they've really burned through absolutely everything, which I think is unfortunately an increasingly smaller number of people. But they keep coming up with new classes of drugs, fortunately, which should help rescue those who, are in that situation with lots of prior resistance.
Yeah, the world is good now. It wasn't good 3-4 years ago for me, especially. So, and for the West and people in the United States have access. Obviously, a lot of those drugs have not been approved anywhere else. So yeah, we have reached a level where we can say if you have a doctor access and you can get on to undetectable if you're complying and adhering with your meds, obviously. But yeah, we don't have immune booster per se for people having undetectable for over 2 years. For those that never achieved over 350 T cells. And some of us are losing CD4s as we age also.
Yeah. I know I have people come up to me and say, oh my God, they're not what they used to be. And it's like, well, you're 10 years older than you used to be. You're 20 years older than you used to be. It's
yeah.
age.
Maybe that is the way we should advocate for it, is that boosting an aging drug instead of approach, instead of just, boosting CD4s, which some pharmaceutical companies got scared. I didn't want to go through the history of why they don't want to spend money on this.
So what are your thoughts on, there was a lot of use of growth hormone back in the day, and growth hormone analogs are like Agrifta are approved for visceral fat, people who have the Crick's belly. What are your thoughts about using that for thymic reconstitution and seeing if that could help boost people's force?
I don't think there's any hope or access or pricing. I really think it's a mood it's a waste of time. I believe growth hormone can increase some T cells and stuff, but the side effects associated with it, like the joint aches, the the huge price, the daily injections, not even weekly, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think I would inject growth hormone if somebody told me you'll get 100 T cells more if you inject this every day. If they come up with a long-acting GH and do a study, but no, all the growth hormone releasing hormones are out there, the peptides. The FDA has already sent letters to all the compounders and that they are not approved for any use, so they're shutting down a lot of those. The Pormarelin, even Agrifta has had no future because of pricing. And so the growth hormones, to be honest with you, I know people just have access and money they want, and they really have for me, they have no place in muscle growth, on frailty, or immune boosting. And that's my personal.
You heard it here first. Right.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I guess that's it, huh?
Looks like it. Well, we'd like to thank you, for doing this twice because of the internet glitches the first time, and everybody for coming on board. And now we've got a copy that we can post on our YouTube channel, Carp has its own YouTube channel, so look for it there or on our website. And Nelson will post the slides that Nelson used today, and he mentioned some other resources that he might include with that. So I'll look for that. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us here at HARP. And thank you all for joining today.
Thanks a lot for having me again. See you guys probably next year. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nelson. Bye now.